Can you describe your role as a criminal defense attorney and what a typical day looks like for you?
Well, so the fun part about that is there is no typical days, right? Every day it starts with a new journey, a new adventure, new location. The one thing that's probably consistent for me is every day I come to the office here in Stephenville about 7 o'clock, and then from there determine where I'm going to go to next. And that's the fun part about my job is it could bring me from, of course, Stephenville to any of the neighboring counties to within 60 miles to the next county. So usually starts getting here, getting organized, getting my day going, figuring out where I'm going to be at next, and then getting prepared for my caseload. And then from there, it flies by. As soon as the day starts, it's almost over with. Usually spent most of my day in a courthouse somewhere in some county. And like I said, it could just vary from day to day, week to week, which county that is. Typically, there's about, I'd say, 10 to 15 different courthouses a week that I go to. And in that, there could be an assortment of 2 cases to 10 cases maybe on a case docket for that county that we're in. And we spend our time most mornings from 9 o'clock to noon on whatever cases are there, and then go on to the next courthouse, usually the next day or that afternoon. I'm sorry, and spend our time on that next caseload in the afternoon in that other county. So, and then home by 6 o'clock, typically out the door in the office by 6:30 and home. So that's a typical day for me, and it's just, of course, chaos of phone calls, of emails, of people interactions, and then get to do it all over again the next day.
Yeah, it sounds like you don't really get much of a routine going very much.
The only routine is knowing that tomorrow is going to be another day of chaos.
So, what inspired you to pursue a career in criminal law and family law?
Well, that's, a lot of people will probably tell you the story that I had an uncle or a grandfather or something like that that kind of inspired them or role models, but for me, that's just not the case. Really, nobody in my family that ever was or involved in the legal system, at least I guess from the right side of the legal system, right? And it wasn't even because somebody had a negative impact or an experience with the legal system that caused me to do this. The most truthful answer that I give everybody when they ask if, why did you become an attorney, is simply got through college and wasn't ready to grow up yet. And said, I need to do something different besides get a job. And so law school seemed to make sense at the time. And that's what I decided to do, was go off into law school. And there was times during law school where I really began to wonder if that was the right decision as well. But after law school, able to come home back to Stephenville, it turned out to be, no doubt in my mind, the right decision. So that's really what persuaded me to become a lawyer, is just not wanting to grow up. But then from there, it allows me to use hopefully a lot of the skill sets that I have, things that I think I'm good at, whether it comes to just being able to deal with people, handle high conflict, high stress situations, be able to kind of break down complex issues, and just the grind that comes with the day-to-day task of being a lawyer are all things that I think I can handle well. And so there's not many professions that I could think of that would allow me to apply the skills that I think that I'm good at to the day-to-day task like being a lawyer.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. It's not the typical story you get. So,
It's not your typical story. Like I said, I wish I could tell you that I was inspired by something I saw when I was in third grade, but it's just not the truth. So,
well, what do you find the most rewarding and also the most challenging about defending clients in the justice system?
well, the most rewarding and challenging is, in fact, exactly that, your clients. Um, of course, and it might be sound kind of cliche, but it's the truth. There is the ability to help people is really what, if you're doing it for the right reasons, what should motivate you from day to day to want to go achieve the highest level of success and put the most work into your craft, being a lawyer, that you possibly can do. The ability to really help people in their worst moments. And that's what makes my job hard, is because I'm dealing with hundreds of people's worst things in their life. And it's not just, like I said, one person, it's hundreds of people, and having to make sure that they understand that their issue is as important as anybody else's. And it is. And so the hard part is trying to make sure that every client and person we interact with really believes that we have their case as number one priority. So the good is the clients, and the positive outcomes, the times when we go to court and then we get the results that we're hoping to achieve, and the clients are able to move on with their lives in a positive way. And then likewise, the things that are challenging about my job are the clients. I always say that this would be the greatest job in the world if I didn't have a client, and it really would be, because clients presents problems. because once again, this is high stress, high stakes for the people I represent. So sometimes you're dealing with people that just, they're not in their best mindset, nor are they on their best behavior. And that's what makes this job challenging, is having to deal with people like that.
So, can you share a case that had a lasting impact on on you personally or professionally? Obviously, within
Sure.
confidentiality.
You bet. And there's always cases that stay with you, right? When you've been doing this for as long as I have, you look back and there's just things that you don't forget. And I think it's probably, unfortunately, for me, at least the negatives, the bad things, the bad outcomes are the ones that really stick with you, because those are the ones you always look back and go, and beat yourself up with and go, what could I have done more? What could I have worked harder at or tried to have been better at for the better outcomes? And now, of course, I think those are what make you be a better lawyer at the end, is when you have those moments of reflection. But there are many criminal cases I look back and over my career and go, man, you know what? I wish the outcome could have been different. And you kind of become hard on yourself. And I think any person that does criminal defense will tell you that this is what we do. We always, at the end, when the outcomes aren't the way we want them to be, begin to second guess what could we have done, what should we have done. But the reality is, you also have to be confident and believe that you did everything you could and you worked as hard as you possibly could. And if you feel confident that you did those things, then it's like anything else. We can play coulda, shoulda, woulda all day, but the likelihood of it ever changing anything is just not. It's in the past, and you have to leave it in the past to move on. But those are the things that make you a better lawyer, make you a better person, and make you want to do better next time around too. Is just so that you can try to provide the best outcome and best services for your clients.
All right, our next one. How do you maintain objectivity and empathy and focus in cases that might involve difficult or controversial subject matter?
Well, and there's a lot of things that I do and or maybe represent people for that I personally don't agree with or that I personally can't understand. Of course, people always struggle. The one that comes to mind is, how can you represent somebody that's accused of maybe doing a horrible thing to a child, right? Or to anybody, a horrible, hateful crime. And then what it always brings me back to is that, the Constitution provides everyone, no matter who you are, the opportunity of a fair trial, of a trial by your peers. There's due process and things that every one of us is entitled to have, and somebody's got to be the person for that person who's willing to stick their neck out there to ensure that that is done. We oftentimes talk about how fair are things, and there's not a lot of fairness in a lot of things that we do. Now, is it the most fair system in the world? You bet it is. But there are a lot of days the things that we do are not fair, and there's not fairness necessarily involved to the extent that we want it to be. But that's really what I think in those tough situations, those tough cases, what you have to do in the job that I have, you have to be willing to say, you know what, these are things that our country were founded upon, these principles, these foundations, and you've got to be willing to do those for all people, not maybe just the people that you like better or the things that you think people did that you agree with more.
Well, and I think you kind of almost answered my next question with your answer to that one, which is, how does the phrase equal justice under law, what does that mean to you in your daily work? And I think you kind of touched on it just now. So moving on from that, what are some misconceptions people often have about criminal defense lawyers or the people they represent, and how that plays into the minds of maybe just the general public?
Sure. So, probably a lot of it comes back to the things you see on TV, correct? There's a reason why I think that, TV, shows depict mainly people that do criminal defense. It's exciting. It's high energy. It's, the kind of things we're talking about here today. It's the unknowns from day in, day out. It's not fun to go practice civil law and do litigation or discovery and those kinds of things. It's fun and sexy to talk about going to a courtroom and the things that you see on TV. And so it's that what I think that makes this job exciting for us to continue to do it and want to do it, is because of that unknown of what the day is going to bring. So that kind of, I believe, gets to really, I guess, that question, in my opinion.
Well, and we're going to kind of shift gears away from your career a little bit, and kind of change over. What is some advice you would give to someone who wants to become a criminal lawyer?
Well, like I said, number one, you got to be willing to work hard. That's just if this is not something you're passionate about, and for you as an individual, you're not willing to every single day put 100% into something like this, then maybe this is not the job for you. And likewise, you got to be willing, as we talked about a second ago, go and take the hard positions, take the hard cases, stand up for those people that maybe are not able to stand up for themselves, or that have positions or things in their life they've done that you don't agree with. I think that's what it requires. And then more importantly, especially when you're in a rural area like here in Erath County, you have to understand that it's not a luxury or a privilege. It's more of a sometimes you're serving a basic need or necessity when you're providing those levels of services for folks that are entitled to representation. And I think at the end of the day that you've really got to be a person who's willing to take that stuff serious, because it's serious business. We try to have as much fun as we can in what we do every single day, and if you don't find fun and humor in a lot of stuff that we do, you're gonna have a tough go at it. But at the same time, you've got to be willing to accept that. I mean, these are people's lives we're dealing with and serious outcomes, and have the mindset and just the determination and the grit, the day in the day out, to be able to grind through these things. And not everybody is set to do that. And I think until you kind of get in that position, you don't know if you can. But I think you can at least know going into it, do I have the work ethic and the want to do that? And if you have those two things, you can accomplish a lot.
Well, and I think you kind of touched on my next question and just now too. But what are some skills or personality traits that you think is important for success in this field?
Well, here's the deal. For like what I do, and I know this sounds kind of corny, but it's the honest to God truth. There is so much of my job comes down to one-on-one connections and interactions with people, and the ability to ensure people that they have confidence in me, and that when they meet me, they know that their case is going to be, like I said, important, that it's going to be taken care of properly. And that's just one of those deals. Some people have the ability to communicate on a one-on-one personal level with folks, and some people it's a struggle. And I think that's the number one thing. It's like any relationship, you have to be able to, in my profession, build a quick, confident, and close relationship so people will trust these things to them. These are oftentimes personal, intimate topics they want to talk to you about. And it's not things you want to just tell any stranger off the street. So you have to have the ability to, number one, make that contact, that connection with folks. And that carries all the way through from the initial consultation and the first time you meet somebody all the way through the courthouse. You've got to be confident in what you do, confident when you step inside that courtroom that you have the ability, because you've worked hard enough, to put your skills to use and to go out there and to do those things for your clients. And so those are really the things that you need to have, and carry those in day out to be successful.
If you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice before doing all of this, what would you do if you had a time machine?
Well, I think essentially probably most attorneys' answer to that question would be, oh, don't go to law school, right? Don't be an attorney. And I hate that answer. I hate when attorneys tell people that want to maybe be a lawyer, don't be a lawyer, do anything but be a lawyer. It drives me crazy, because if you hate being a lawyer that bad, go do something else. And I'll tell you, I mean, what I tell most people is this is a job, and it's no different than any other job. Whether you're out there and you're carrying the trash, or whether you're scraping the sidewalks, or whatever you might be doing, this is a job. And so I think if I had to go back and try to prepare my younger self for something, the best thing that I could tell my younger self is just get ready, because you know what you're doing today and the work you're putting today is going to pay dividends down the road. And that's how I truly feel like that I've been blessed growing up to be able to have a good work ethic, to be around people that taught me to work hard, the priorities in life, a good foundation that set me up for success. And so I think that would be the biggest thing. I would just go back and encourage myself that you're on a good path.
Well, and we're going to change topics again, and we kind of talked about this before we got on camera. But what does your local courthouse, the Erath County Courthouse, mean to you as a place of work, history, and a symbol of the community?
Well, and it's like a lot of courthouses. And it's probably, I think this is the generic answer you get for most people. It's, it's the bloodline of your community, right? It's not only from a legal aspect, but from just our town, our county. It all begins and ends there, in my opinion. And we're so blessed here in Erath County to have a beautiful courthouse. That it's probably getting close to time for another restoration, but I think it was in the late '80s the last time it was restored, and still after almost 40 years, it's still in great shape, I think, and it's just really a true testament to the people of this county and how much pride they have in the things that we do have and the sacrifices that the folks made in the past to get us here. There is, when you walk back in that courthouse, it's, of course, there's so much nostalgia as far as just, especially when you go in the old courtroom on the second floor. I mean, it's like something you'd see heck in a Perry Mason movie where you walk in and there's a gallery and the double doors open and this beautiful wood grain. I mean, and I think people that probably don't do this every day like I do don't know how beautiful it really is, and how there's a lot of counties that aren't as lucky to have something like that. And we've got it right down the street here that anyone can walk in any day and appreciate just the overall just the grand beauty that it offers. And without a pretty courthouse and you're downtown, it really kind of puts you back as far as development. You talk about things that go on and people wanting to come to your community. It can be a detractor, and we're just so blessed in Erath County to have something that people want to be around and make it the focal point to build upon.
All right, and I've got one more before we kind of start to bring things
Okay.
to a close. How has your career as a lawyer shaped your parenting and the way that you deal with your kids?
So, of course, like any parent, you try to get a bluff on your kids, right, as far as what you do and what your day-to-day stuff looks like. For the longest time, I had my youngest one convinced she would, when people wanted to ask what does your dad do for a living, it wasn't that I'm a lawyer, an attorney, or whatever term you want to use. Is I go out there and defend the Constitution. That's what I do every single day, and it's the truth. There's not any other profession in the world that probably goes off and on a day-to-day basis goes and truly defends the Constitution and constitutional rights of people other than being a criminal defense attorney. There's nothing else in the world that does that. And so that's what I had my kids believe, at least my youngest one, for the longest time, that I defend the Constitution every day. But I'll tell you what, it's not so much, it's more importantly the skills and the life lessons you can teach your children about, going back to what I've talked about, just the grind, the adversity, the day-to-day challenges, the unexpected things in life that you encounter, that you hope to pass those lessons on to your children. And so that's really the parenting that I think I gain, and the things that I hope to pass on to my children is that they can see firsthand is, what, Dad cares about what he does. He works extremely hard at it, and not only does it just for us, but he does it for the people that he represents, and that means something to him. And if they can see that from what I do every single day, then I feel like I've succeeded as a parent.
No, that's really important. And now we're going to bring things kind of to a close here. How has your perspective on justice shifted or changed or been affected by you working within it for so long?
Sure. Well, of course, I mean, I wish I could sit here and tell you all that, like I said earlier, that this is by all means 100% fair and right and righteous, and then that's not the reality. It's just not. Unfortunately, people walk into courtrooms every day, and we're all human, right? A lot of things can go wrong in a case and end up with a bad outcome, and we hate to talk about those things, but that's the reality of the lives that we live. And then likewise, a lot of things sometimes we just get lucky. And I know it sounds kind of silly, but I tell my clients all the time, a lot of days what we do, especially when we go try jury cases, is no different than going to Vegas and let's put it on black or red and see what happens. And that's a lot of times what we're doing. You're asking 6 or 12 people to determine the fate or the outcome in your lives, in your case. And there's no telling what is going on in those people's lives. Or likewise, if you ask one person, the judge. And those are the things after time that, for lack of a better word, you become jaded. You do a little jaded. You become a little jaded about what has happened in people's lives and the process and how we got here. But I think even when you become jaded, you become a little down on yourself, begin to doubt things. I think it goes back to kind of how we started this conversation of, why do you do this? What does the legal system mean to you? And those are the things that I always come back to, as to what is my role, my job, and what I hope to achieve in this process. And like I said, it goes back to hopefully that I can ensure people are afforded the opportunities that our Constitution provides for them. And I think if you really mean those things when you say them, that will help you keep your priorities right in life when you practice law, and it'll continue to give you the enthusiasm to do the best that you can every single day. So as hard as it is at times to want to get down on yourself and get negative about the situation we find ourselves in, it's the victories, and it's just the how fortunate that I am every day that I get to do what I do. It's a privilege. It's not a luxury or a right or anything else. I don't take for granted at all the opportunities that I get, and so those are the things that keep me motivated and day in, day out to try to do the best that I can. So that's really my opinion on what I've gained from this experience and for the justice system. That it's not perfect, but it's probably the best that we have here in the entire world, without a doubt.